Why is China building 3 large ships in a desert? This is extremely weird, and no country has done this before. Look closely at these images. Both of them look exactly like aircraft carriers. Now, an aircraft carrier is a war machine, a floating airbase with runways, control towers, missile technology, everything that can destroy another country within minutes. But an aircraft carrier needs water to float. Just 4 months ago, in March 2025, the US Naval Institute leaked some satellite images of China. Those images revealed that China is building this new aircraft carrier in a desert, the Taklamakan Desert. Yes, that's the name. It's a barren desert covering 350,000 square kilometers, where only sand and silence stretch for miles. Yet in this harsh environment, the Chinese army hasn't built just one aircraft carrier replica. They've constructed an entire navy. China's military has built replicas of US Navy aircraft carriers and other US warships. We have to assume China wanted us to see these in the desert. In this second satellite image, look at this structure. It looks exactly like a warship. In the third image, an entire naval port appears. Just for comparison, here is India's deep naval port, which India built on Mauritius as a military base. China's naval port looks quite similar to India's port. Now, the first worrying thing for India is that the Taklamakan Desert is only about 200 to 250 kilometers from India's line of actual control. India and China's rivalry is well known. But there's another important point. The United States is petrified by this. These satellite images were published by the US Naval Institute itself, and they admitted that all these Chinese structures are exact replicas of US naval ships. The shape of the first structure matches America's latest and most advanced aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford class. Its length also matches Ford, about 337 meters. The second structure resembles a US Arleigh Burke class destroyer. Every detail matches: the forward gun on the ship's bow, the vertical launch system just behind it, and a helipad at the stern. It's a carbon copy of the US destroyer. Finally, China AS third aircraft carrier replica matches the USS Nimitz class in radar systems and shape. The only difference is size. China compromised and made it about half the size, roughly 173 meters smaller. Now listen carefully, because the mystery gets even more confusing. If you move a bit outside the Taklamakan Desert into the Indo-Pacific region, you'll see these red dots. They show the US most elite warships and aircraft carriers that are deployed near the South China Sea to contain China. Interestingly, 2 of the deadliest warships in that fleet are the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier and an Arleigh Burke class destroyer, exactly the 2 warships whose replicas China built in the Taklamakan Desert. So this is definitely not a coincidence. It's part of a deliberate Chinese war strategy. But the puzzle doesn't end there. If you study the satellite images closely, you'll see a curved line beside the aircraft carrier replica that looks like a railway track. The US Naval Institute noted 2 strange things about this potential railway line. First, one end goes into a building, but the other end abruptly stops. Why build a half railway line in a deserted desert if it doesn't connect to mainland China or any military base? Second, if it really is a railway, why is it built crooked instead of straight? So there are many riddles to solve, and considering China's history of being secretive, many questions remain. To understand why China would take such steps, we must understand what compels China, which countries it sees as threats. The whole world knows that China's 2 biggest concerns today are India and the South China Sea. China claims Indian territories like Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh, which has led to wars in the past. China's second major insecurity is the South China Sea, the next global power center because of emerging economies, deep-sea minerals, and strategic trade routes. That is why China's 9-dash line exists. China self-declares this sea area and the islands and territories within it, including Taiwan, as its sovereign territory. Vietnam and other countries have contested this. According to the 2016 International Court of Arbitration ruling, China has no lawful claim over these territories in the South China Sea. Nevertheless, China has built at least 27 artificial islands in the region and deployed its military to strengthen its dominance, especially in the Spratly and Paracel archipelagos, where major Chinese military bases exist. China enforces these imaginary borders. If any country crosses them, the Chinese Navy attacks, claiming the threat to China's national security. Right now, the Chinese helicopter immediately gives a warning. So yes, the South China Sea is China's most sensitive sore point. Unfortunately for China, the US constantly watches that very sore spot. Recently, the US deployed an entire naval fleet to the South China Sea to counter China. The US also regularly provokes China. Sudden war drills, joint exercises with allies. In May 2025, the US and the Philippines conducted war drills in the South China Sea. And just 3 days ago, the US again held military drills in the region opposite China. This time, the US even asked its allied countries whether they would support the US if a war broke out with China in the region. Basically, the US keeps pushing China toward a full-scale confrontation. China has been infuriated by repeated US presence near the islands China occupies and by US carrier groups conducting joint exercises. These exercises come back to haunt China. They condemn US sales of destroyers, like the USS John S. McCain, and accuse the US of deliberately stoking regional tension. Of course, China will not remain passive. We have already discussed China's illegal claims and aggressive military expansion in the South China Sea. The question is this US-China Cold War the main reason China is building replicas of US warships and aircraft carriers in the desert? The strong answer is yes. China is preparing for war, but this is a deception war. That means these ships are not real. They are fake dummies created to produce an illusion for the world. What do the Chinese satellite images show? At least 20 fighter jets are deployed ready to attack. But what if I told you that the entire Chinese airbase is completely fake and even the 20 fighter jets are just dummy props? The tanks, aircraft carriers, flight decks, missile defense systems, everything could be part of a deception technique. Deception is not new to China. It is an old technique documented as far back as 2300 years ago in 342 BCE. At that time, during the Zhou dynasty era, 7 warring states used deceptive tactics. One famous example is a general who used torches to trick the enemy into thinking his army was larger than it was. Deceptive techniques weren't limited to ancient China. In World War II, the Allies created a ghost army to fool the powerful German forces. Operation Fortitude staged a fake invasion to convince Germans that the Allies planned to invade at a different port using inflatable tanks, dummy ships, hollow tents, artists, sound engineers and actors to create sonic and radio signals so aerial surveillance would reveal a fake army. The deception worked. Germans concentrated defense in the wrong place, making the actual Normandy invasion easier. A single illusion changed the course of the war. That's how powerful deception strategy can be when used correctly. So, has the mystery been solved? Are these just fake targets built by China to scare America and India? The answer is both yes and no. When the US Naval Institute investigated further, they found other satellite images showing those ship structures struck as if they had been attacked. That revealed these were not ships, but dummy target sites built in the Taklamakan Desert in 2018. China built them in 2018 when its DF-2121 missile was in final testing phases. This year, China's newly developed DF-21D missile is not a normal missile. It is one of the world's first anti-ship ballistic missiles whose purpose is to make precision strikes on moving aircraft carriers, floating cities. Such missile technology has only recently become available even to the US. Ideally, these missiles should be tested at sea, but sea tests would require issuing NOTAMs and warnings to neighboring countries to avoid civilian or cargo ships being hit during tests. Also, after an attack, the US or India could recover debris and study Chinese missile technology. That could leak China's tech or reveal flaws. China does not want that. Therefore, they needed a place to test without disturbance. That's why they transformed the Taklamakan into a fake Indo-Pacific war zone with multiple target sites and even a dummy naval port. The 3 chosen ship models are specific because they simulate the most advanced US warships deployed near the South China Sea. A Ford-class aircraft carrier replica, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyer replicas, and a Nimitz-class carrier model. These aren't T-3D ships, but flat metal outlines with vertical poles, fitted with infrared imaging and millimeter-wave radar sensors that track every missile impact signature. This lets China know exactly where to strike for maximum damage to American warships. Practicing on these multi-ship models helps the Chinese military discover vulnerabilities of the American Navy. Besides ship models, there's another target range a little further away: China's Terrestrial Strike Simulation Zone. This site contains replicas of land-based targets like dummy runways, radar complexes, the radar systems that track enemy fighters, power grids and towers, and fighter jet hangars. These are not random targets, but the first-line defenses of any country. In simple terms, if an enemy's runways and jet hangars are destroyed, that country's air force can't counterattack. If radars are destroyed, the missile defense system collapses. During Operation Sindoor, for example, Pakistan's radars were jammed and airstrikes were carried out, disabling their defenses. Electronic warfare units that jam radars can blind tracking stations and disrupt communication grids. Destroying power grids can cut electricity to essential services like communications and healthcare, so a country can be crippled before war even formally begins. We also have many other pieces of evidence that China is not only preparing these sites for the US, but that India is also a major target. In 2006, a leaked Google Earth image revealed that China built an exact replica of Aksai Chin inside its own Ningxia province for war rehearsals. China uses this place to regularly train its soldiers so that if India tries to reclaim Aksai Chin, Chinese soldiers can push them back. China has literally encircled India from multiple directions in recent years. They've built 37 secret military cities in strategic locations, from where they can launch almost instant airstrikes on India. These cities are fully equipped, runways, helipads, everything ready. For example, look at Shigatse Peace Airport, which is only a few hours from India's Sikkim, or Ningchi Mainling Airport, which is right along the Arunachal border. Some airbases are so close that Chinese fighter jets can penetrate Indian airspace in just 6 to 7 minutes. China has also built all-weather lanes and rail networks along the Ladakh border to ensure troop mobility in wartime. Another worrying development. During the Galwan standoff, reports said China deployed 38 armed robotic units near Ladakh, and today, 88 robotic soldier units are deployed there. Yes, robot soldiers on wheeled platforms that can move over any terrain and fire like a soldier. Imagine the scale of China's preparations. Therefore, China's ships in the Taklamakan Desert are a warning to India as well. These are not just dummy ship models, they are full-scale war rehearsal sites. China is writing the story of a war in advance. So how prepared are we to fight back? We are certainly upgrading road networks, building strategic tunnels like the Sella Tunnel, and upgrading Northeast Air Force stations. But the scale at which China is conducting real-life military model creation and regular war drills is far beyond our preparations. That's a huge disadvantage for India. It's high time we realize that China's threat is not a distant future issue. It is real and happening right now. A strange part of this is that India's intelligence agency, RAW, and America, CIA, are apparently working together in a kind of silent war against China in our Himalayas. I know this sounds unbelievable, but tough times call for tough measures. The CIA, which once ran operations against India, is now trying to contain China alongside India. I have a detailed video on all these strategies and operations if you're interested. I highly recommend you watch it. Click the button above or somewhere here to view it. If you think India should take these matters seriously, share this video widely to raise awareness. See you in the next video.